Good morning. The need for international solidarity and multilateral cooperation is more conspicuous than ever. The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2020 to the World Food Programme for its efforts to combat hunger, for its contribution to bettering conditions for peace in conflict-affected areas, and for acting as a driving force in efforts to prevent the use of hunger as a weapon of war and conflict. The World Food Programme is the world's largest humanitarian organization addressing hunger and promoting food security. Last year, the WFP provided assistance to close to 1 million people in 88 countries who are victims of acute food insecurity and hunger. In 2015, eradicating hunger was adopted as one of UN's Sustainable Development Goals. The WFP is the UN's primary instrument for realizing this goal. In recent years, the situation has taken a negative turn. In 2019, 135 million people suffered from acute hunger, the highest number in many years. Most of the increase was caused by war and armed conflict. The coronavirus pandemic has contributed to a strong upsurge in the number of victims of hunger in the world. In countries such as Yemen, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, South Sudan, and Burkina Faso, the combination of violent conflict and the pandemic has led to a dramatic rise in the number of people living on the brink of starvation. In the face of the pandemic, the World Food Programme has demonstrated an impressive ability to intensify its efforts. As the organization itself has stated, until the day we have a vaccine, food is the best vaccine against chaos. The world is in danger of experiencing a hunger crisis of inconceivable proportions if the World Food Programme and other food assistance organizations do not receive the financial support they have requested. The link between hunger and armed conflict is a vicious circle. War and conflict can cause food insecurity and hunger, just as hunger and food insecurity can cause latent conflicts to flare up and trigger the use of violence. We will never achieve the goal of zero hunger unless we also put an end to war and armed conflict. The Norwegian Nobel Committee wishes to emphasize that providing assistance to increase food security not only prevents hunger, but can also help to improve prospects for stability and peace. The World Food Programme has taken the lead in combining humanitarian work with peace efforts through pioneering projects in South America, Africa, and Asia. The World Food Programme was an active participant in the diplomatic process that culminated in May 2018 in the UN Security Council's unanimous adoption of Resolution 2417, which, for the first time, explicitly addresses the link between conflict and hunger. The Security Council also underscored UN member states' obligation to help ensure that food assistance reaches those in need and condemned the use of starvation as a method of warfare. With this year's award, the Norwegian Nobel Committee wishes to turn the eyes of the world towards the millions of people who suffer from or face the threat of hunger. The World Food Programme plays a key role in multilateral cooperation on making food security an instrument of peace and has made a strong contribution towards mobilizing UN member states to combat the use of hunger as a weapon of war and conflict. The organization contributes daily to advancing the fraternity of nations referred to in Alfred Nobel's will. As the UN's largest specialized agency, the World Food Programme is a modern version of the peace congresses that the Nobel Peace Prize is intended to promote. The World Food Programme, the work of the World Food Programme to the benefit of humankind is an endeavor that all nations of the world should be able to endorse and support. Thank you very much. Kan jeg få krykkene?
You're looking at images live from Oslo, the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize.
In the announcement, you say that hunger is often used as a weapon in conflicts. Explain.
The 2020 Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to the UN World Food Programme. Is that something of a surprise, Richard?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it was not really in the top kind of list that have been put together by people who watch this every year as kind of hot button things. I didn't see the World Food Programme very high on the bookkeepers' kind of betting stakes. But if you kind of pull back and think about this
organisation,
organisation,
it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So the Nobel Committee has a history of giving the award to UN institutions, especially at points in time where they are particularly relevant to the situation going on at the time. They are making the case that food security is very intimately tied with peace.
A weapon of war.
Yeah, exactly.
We heard right there. And this is very much tied to, as well, the pandemic. From what we heard right there. The pandemic deepening food insecurity globally, especially in countries in Africa. We heard about Congo, Nigeria, South Sudan.
That's right. So making the point that conflict and food security are intimately linked, that the corona crisis, the pandemic coming on top of that, creates a very severe risk of much greater worsening of those crises. Referring to some of the countries where the World Food Programme has absolutely been essential to trying to stave off famine, for instance, Yemen, which has been war-torn for years now. We've all seen the terrible images that have come out of Yemen in recent years, the World Food Programme playing a critical role in trying to keep the population going there.
Yeah, the dependency in Yemen, for example, on the supplies coming from the UN World Food Programme. A driving force in the awarding of the Peace Prize is, of course, Alfred Nobel's wish that this is tied to the peace congresses that was just mentioned right there of the past. And there is a continuity, isn't there?
And that was really specifically brought up just in what we heard, of course. And I think they also wanted to highlight that they were acknowledging the World Food Programme not just for its mission in itself, but for the way in which it works. So it was very interesting. The very first thing that we heard in the announcement was that the need for global cooperation is greater than ever at the moment. So, of course, that got me thinking, all right, maybe we're about to hear the World Health Organization, you know, in the context of the pandemic. And they're using this to say, wait a minute, it's not just all about the coronavirus. There are other factors here. And I think this is also something they quite often want to do with the Nobel Peace Prize, is to draw attention to issues that they feel are not getting sufficient attention.
And this was clear when we heard that quote, an unprecedented crisis is looming.
Yeah.
I mean, that is really shining the light on, in effect, what was indicated and what we heard there specifically, a knock-on effect of the pandemic, collapse of supply lines and the breakdown of not only food supplies, but the possibility of travel in some of those regions as well because of a lack of petrol, and diesel and things like this.
I mean, you know, the fear of disruptions to food supplies is something that's even hit rich Western countries this year, isn't it? In the early stages of the pandemic, you'll remember here in Berlin. Panic shopping. Supermarkets suddenly emptied out of all sorts of things. Now, of course, that was quickly restored, but that was just a very, very sort of like in miniature, tiny, microscopic version of the problems that people face in conflict zones, where they don't even have supermarkets.
Yeah, and we saw other signals as well as our own need at the grocery store. There was a drop-off in donations to charitable organizations as soon as this hit the pandemic, with people concerned about their expenditures and unemployment, et cetera.
That's right. And, I mean, this has been a concern in many countries in the world, not just in war-torn countries. At the early stages of the pandemic, there was concern, for instance, in India, of course, with an enormous population, an enormous number of people to feed. About whether there would be an impact on food supply and security there. That did not pan out, thankfully. But I think this is also a reminder that, you know, this pandemic is still by far not over. In fact, just yesterday, the number of new cases hit a new record of 338,000 globally. So if this is continuing, and especially the global south is being more affected as time passes.
The numbers we're talking about for 2019, 135 million people suffering from food insecurity. And clearly, according to the committee, that number expected in 2020 to be increasing.
That's right. It's quite interesting to think also about one thing that in the announcement towards the end of it was where Berit Reiss-Andersen said, this is something, you know, this mission is something that the entire world ought to be able to get behind. And I think that is interesting that they did choose this organization, because it is quite likely to be a less controversial award.
It is. It's more neutral. I thought there's a lot of wisdom in this choice to that degree, that this is an organization, no matter what your political stripe, you can get behind this.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting choice from that point of view, because the world is polarized. The debate around the World Health Organization is polarized. You know, the United States just pulled out of it this year, Donald Trump accusing it of being essentially a Chinese front of some kind. I think the Nobel Committee seem in this choice to have decided they don't want to go into that kind of controversy. They don't want to fuel some of the conspiratorial kind of theories around the coronavirus, which of course have emerged in various sort of niches of the internet. And they want to draw attention to a major issue that is not getting enough attention right now.